students will line up 6 feet apart. This is going to have to be practiced and monitored, and we can't let that go away. We absolutely have to maintain this. Every time the kids are up and walking around, they have their face mask on, and we need to teach them what 6 feet apart looks like, and to anticipate the line stopping so they don't bump into the person in front of them. So they're going to actually have to look around themselves and pay attention, which is not a strong point with little kids. So we're going to have to train them in this and realize that they're going to mess up because this is brand new. And kids don't naturally pay attention to the world around them. So not get angry at them when they blow it, but be ready with constant reminders. Classes will need to be on time for dismissal and whatnot, because we don't want opportunities for hallway crossings. We don't want one line of kids going down the hallway while another group of kids is at their lockers. So at your locker is going to have to be go there, grab something, come back, not sit at your locker and pack it. So if we're going to do lockers, we're going to have to do them a little differently so that crossings in the hallway can be minimized. I am hoping that we're not going to have to use the bathroom very much because kids are only over there for 2 hours, but it is going to happen, and we're going to have to figure that out together. We're not using the playground at all except for pre-K. So if you've got any mixing of cohorts or parts of cohorts, that has to be written in that cohort's daily log for contract tracing purposes. It's a big pain in the neck, and we have to trace it. So it all has to be written down. So here's our list in the middle of page 11 of how long 6 feet away is, how to walk 6 feet behind the person in front of you. We have to train our kids in all of this stuff. And so that has to be a part of that first week, and it has to be retaught constantly. Staff members will also have to maintain physical distance. The use of the staff room should be minimal, with 6 feet of distance and face coverings being used. Staff meetings are going to take place in room 207, which is the classroom right next to the front office. And we're going to use physical distance and face coverings while we're there, unless we get there and we settle and we decide that we want to take the face coverings off, but that's going to be up to us when we're there. When possible, staff meetings may be held online. We're going to do a few online. We're going to do a few that are PLCs instead of full staff, so we'll tackle that as we go. The cohorting section, 1D, we can't make our class groupings separate because of the smart kids and the low kids or anything like that. That's illegal. So we have to give all kids the same access to education and the same access to their peers. Groupings will be determined partly by the time convenience of their parents' work schedule and will not be determined by any small group or individual basis because that's illegal. If you are a staff member who comes into contact with multiple cohorts, you are required to wear a face covering and maintain 6 feet of distance, as well as wash or sanitize your hands between interactions. So if you are a middle school teacher and you're going into the other classroom to teach a class, you have to keep your mask on the whole time you're in the other classroom. You have to sanitize as you enter the classroom, and you have to make sure that you don't cross that 6 feet barrier. And if that happens regularly, then that should be part of the regular schedule that's in the cohort binder, so it doesn't have to be written in every day. Any staff member needing to talk to anyone in a classroom must do this in the doorway or the hallway and not enter the classroom. We are trying to keep the classroom just for the cohort. You have to have a face covering on. and you have to remain physically distant. Now, if this happens in the hallway, it doesn't have to go in the binder unless entering the classroom is necessary. During all-day instruction, middle school is going to be one cohort, but for right now, we're keeping the class seated in their classroom, and the two teachers will switch rooms for limited in-person instruction, and that's on near the bottom of page 12. Because math and ELA groups are so different, the kids get in different groupings that are not based on grade level, but ability level, and there's a lot of movement. These two are going to be taught online so that the students can get the individualized education they require. We're not allowed to change how we teach math and LA just because it's not convenient for us. We have to give their individualized education first priority. So if we teach this online so kids can tune into whatever class they need to, that's much better. So middle school math and ELA will be part of the 2 to 3 o'clock class time, half an hour for math and half an hour for ELA. If there are students in the 4th and 5th grade who also need to move their math times, then math will be taught in your grade level at between 2 and 3 as well, so that everybody has access to the same math classes. Down here we have the beginnings of more limitations during all-day instruction. During all-day instruction, the middle school students will have to be really monitored by both teachers to make sure that physical distancing takes place and that everyone wears their masks while they're moving. PE classes, while we're all day, will be taught by the teachers, and it will be taught on the playground because the gym right now is being used for mass overflow and religious education, and we can't we don't have the staff to take down and set up all the chairs all the time. I will, however, be doing the lesson planning, so there isn't any planning you need to do. All you have to do is take out today's piece of paper and follow the directions, and it should be okay. But during the 2-hour limited in-person instruction, all the students in pre-K through 8 will remain in one classroom throughout their day. Here are some additional protocols for pre-K kids. In the middle of page 13, please make sure you go through those. 1E is on public health communication, and this is how we make sure that we explain to all of our shareholders everything that's going on. So this is posted on the school webpage and on to SchoolSpeak. I'm making videos that will teach families how to properly wash your hands, how to wear a mask properly, the beginnings of how to line up, and what the first day is going to be like, so that they walk in knowing some things. And then it's up to you to get the class to where you need the class to be. Here on page 14, we have more of the communication protocols, and unfortunately, because this is a government document, there's a lot of repetitiveness. And these are the protocols for all-day instruction and for limited in-person instruction, which is what we're going to start with, and probably what we're going to remain in through the end of January. If a staff member or a student tests positive for COVID, all learning will switch to online comprehensive distance learning for 14 days. So at the end of that cohort, the entire school shuts down. Both cohorts, everything goes online for 14 days. And it is my job to communicate with all the staff and with all of the families, and that will be done as comprehensively as possible so that everybody knows everything that they need to. So 1F on the bottom of page 14 goes through the screening the health screening that's takes place every day before everyone enters. Again, the symptoms include a cough, a temperature of 100.4 plus, chills, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing. These are the ones that always happen in the beginning. However, like we said before, the first symptom is always fever. So we get an early warning system. If they have any of those symptoms that aren't explainable by something else, they need to go home. If they have any respiratory systems, they must remain home for 10 days after the onset of the respiratory symptoms until the symptoms are improving, and separate 24 hours after a fever is gone without fever-reducing medication. So if their respiratory systems are improving and it's been 10 days, then they can return. But also the fever has to be gone. If they've got a doctor's note explaining that it's an illness other than COVID-19, or they have a negative COVID-19 test result, then they can come back before the 10 days are due. The office is going to track all of this, and so hopefully you won't have to deal with very much of this. Now, here's the problem. If a student or a staff member has a chronic or baseline cough that has worsened or is not well controlled with medication, that person will be excluded from school. Staff or students who suffer other symptoms of asthma or allergies will not be excluded from this cough issue. You can't come to school and stay at school if you've got this ravaging cough, not in this day and age. We have to make sure that parents understand that if they've got allergy or asthma symptoms or something, they need to be able to maintain it. Otherwise, people are going to freak out. And that's the problem with pandemics, apparently, is that all the baselines move up. So here on the bottom of page 15 are the basics. This is for staff members and students. This is not for anybody's family members. If a student or a staff member tests positive, they have to stay home for 14 days. This says 10. That should be 14 then. 14 days after the illness onset, not 14 days after the positive test, but after it starts, and 24 hours after the fever is gone without fever-reducing medications. So both of those things have to happen. If after 14 days the other symptoms, the respiratory systems, are not improving, they need to stay home until they do start improving. So this is if one of our people tests positive. Then if one of our people tests negative, so they have a student or a staff member is feeling ill but has a negative test, then the only rules they have to follow is they can't come until 24 hours after the fever is gone without any fever-reducing medication, and 24 hours after the other symptoms have subsided. So whatever other illness, summer cold or whatever that they've got, needs to start going away. If they feel ill but they have not taken a test, if they've got COVID symptoms, they have to stay home for 14 days. We're not going to just say, if you don't take a test, we're just going to take your word for it that it's not COVID, because we can't do that. So if you have symptoms, but you're not going to take a test, you stay home for 2 weeks, and you can't come back until 24 hours after the fever, and all other symptoms are improving. Now, if any of us have someone from our household who has tested positive for COVID, they have to remain home. So it's a self-quarantine thing, and they need to give enough time so that they start showing symptoms if they've got it. If you have been known to have been exposed to anyone with COVID, and exposed means spending 15 minutes or more with them, closer than 6 feet with them. So it's not just in passing, you know, I sat down and had dinner. They had dinner with Uncle Fred, and then Uncle Fred tests positive. Then they also have to stay home for 14 days following the exposure. and we treat it like they've got the symptoms. And if they don't take the test, it's 14 days. And if they do take the test, then it's one of these two.